May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke audio podcast, A Life in Bali. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic distress, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So I just decided I'd do a life in Bali. This is the weekend podcast. You know, usually I put it up Saturday earlier, but I can get it up anytime on the weekend, so I'm doing it now, which is Sunday here. I'm Sunday. I'm 12 hours ahead of New York, see? So I'm right now Sunday at 9:20 in the morning. So I'll have this up by, 11 o'clock or something. East Coast time, 8 a.m. No, 11 p.m. East Coast time, 8 p.m. West Coast time. I wanted to do Life in Bali just to talk about what I see that's happening here in this pandemic. I'm very impressed with how Bali has reacted to the pandemic. Well, it's part of Indonesia, so Indonesia and Bali, and they've taken the pandemic very seriously and dealt with it as well as they can. I think, and there's not the, it's not like in America where you have all these warring factions, and you have states' rights in America. So like every state decides what they want to do. So you don't have a unified response. I mean, you have the CDC, you have the World Health Organization, but you have a whole industry of people fed a lot by Russian bots trying to discredit them, and Fauci and Bill Gates and all that. And there is a lot of disinformation and alternative information. Some of it might be true and this and that, but might not be statistically helpful. You can get here too, but here there's really a unified response, and that's true throughout Asia. And there's different levels of success. It certainly hadn't been perfect, and there'll be individual things we'll read or hear about that are uncool. Like there was a government minister who said, we shouldn't let it push us around. We're going to take it on. We're not going to surrender to it and stuff. And, right away there was the Minister of Health or whatever coming on saying that there will be very strict, rules, and making clear that, we would be wearing masks. You don't have a choice about wearing masks. And following various restrictions and rules. And then there was some guy, some government minister, somebody, right early on who said, we don't need, we're not going to get it like other countries, and we don't need to, do all the restrictions because we have mangosteen skin tea, and that'll protect us. And that didn't have much traction. So, there's individual things like that, and there's, larger mistakes they've made, but, it's figuring out something new, figuring out when you make a missed call, as the reality of it becomes apparent, you make another call, and then you're ready to shift gears again when things change, or when you realize or when you learn more about it. The biggest problem here is being able to afford to buy more vaccine. It's not like America, which has tons of vaccine in places where people refuse to take it. Here in Bali, there have been, right now, I'm going to check and see, but I think about 73% of people in Bali have had the first shot of a, an anti-COVID vaccination. And about, I think, 35% have had the second shot. And that's very, very high for Indonesia. And the reason is that Indonesia is concentrating on Bali getting open again to tourists. It's been like a desert here for the last, I don't know, year and a half, however long. And there have been some tourists, but mainly Indonesian tourists. But right now, no, there's nothing. It depends. I mean, it's been very little. All these places are closed. A lot of places are suspended. But there's an amazing amount open. I've even seen new places open in this, and some of them have been successful. And there's thriving, life on the streets here, but not in the areas that serve tourists. They tend to be a little more desolate. But people are hurting everywhere. We've been on some pretty severe lockdowns recently, and they get extended. Like we're on one now that I think is supposed to be up tomorrow, and somebody told me yesterday nobody's checking anymore to see if you're going to the beach. And actually, under current lockdown rules, you can go to a restaurant, I think they said, and stay there 30 minutes. Nobody's paying any attention to that. It's crazy. But there's restaurants on the beach. So we have not felt, for a while, a month or two, I don't know, comfortable going to the beach to swim. But we can go to the beach to be at a restaurant and then swim in front of the restaurant. There was one lockdown, I think it lasted for 2 weeks, the one before this, where you couldn't go into a restaurant to eat there. You could get food to go, and there was a lot of food to go. I mean, you can get food to go. You can get everything, get your groceries delivered, everything. You can get everything to go delivered here. And that was true before the lockdown, but boy, before the pandemic, but why is it true now? And we went into one, and they said, no, you can eat here. And we ate outside. And they were a very powerful family or something, but we didn't feel comfortable doing that again. I mean, at first we thought it was cool, but then we start hearing things, about what's happening and about foreigners being extradited. What do they call it? Deported for, not wearing masks or whatever. But they're usually people who had other issues. And also they tend to do that more. They've been hard on Canggu because there's a lot of young surfers and cocky people, and there's a lot of Eastern Europeans and Russians over there, and they have a bad reputation here for being involved with rigging ATMs to steal your money from you and stuff like that. They're always arrested. There was one day every one of them was Bulgarian, but anyway. We won't be surprised if tomorrow the government issues an extension of this lockdown. There's still cars and motorbikes going here and there. There's grocery stores, of course, are open. A lot of other stores are open. I went to a home store the other day, or a hardware store, but they have all sorts of stuff, and got some a few things. And there's, you can go to a copy shop, you can get your computer fixed. There's all sorts of places open, and they want everything to open up, but they don't want people to congregate. Thing is, that's easy for foreigners. We have a very low rate of foreigners here getting COVID. But for the local people who congregate, I mean, they live closely together, and the Hindus and the Muslims both have, religious ceremonies and things, are communal ceremonies where they get together, and they feel safe there because that's, the holy places that's the friendly places. So the highest number of people testing positive I've ever seen here happened 2 days ago. 2,000 people. That'd be the equivalent of 160,000 in a day in America testing positive. That's way, I mean, I'm used to it being like 50 or something, but, out of those 2,000 people, 2 of them were foreigners. And I don't know how many foreigners there are here. Let me see if I can find it. I'll check that. I can't find a good number of foreigners living here. I'd guess it's around 100,000 in Bali, but it might be more. It's hard to say. But out of the 2,000 that tested positive for COVID a couple of days ago, 2 of them were foreigners. And it's because of, and they know this, they publish it, it's because of the way they congregate, the way, the Muslims will have a particular holy day and they'll want to go home and be with their families, and they'll travel or they'll go to the mosque. And the Balinese, well, they have constant ceremonies. And, I know Balinese that are avoiding going to temple ceremonies because they make offerings every day so they don't feel separated from their spiritual life. It's sort of a mix of animism and Hinduism here. But anyway, so, there were figures on the number of foreigners in Indonesia, but that, it's such a big place. I wouldn't be surprised if there's 1 million foreigners in Indonesia or more. But, all right, there was a question in Bali, and there was a question in Quora about expat in Indonesia, and I'm going to read you that because it's good. One of the answers. The question was, are there too many tourists living in Bali? And then one person says, it's not the number of foreigners living in Bali that is too high, but the lifestyle they live in, their attitudes toward the local population are cause for concern. While this is certainly going to be a generalization, most foreigners living in Bali fail to assimilate into local culture, something that Westerners often criticize for migrants who come to their countries. 2, live a lifestyle that is enormously resource intensive, consuming far too much water, electricity, often in quantities that are orders of magnitude higher than most Indonesians and Balinese. 3, they hardly contribute to the betterment of the island in which they live. 4, their attitude is still often that of a tourist. They want their whims and luxuries catered to by the local population only because they have more money and are able to afford them. This is very disturbing, in my opinion, as it establishes them as a de facto economic upper class. God, he goes on and on. They live on foreign dollars. Then it goes on with that. They often complain about the side effects of their presence, but fail to take responsibility for it or recognize themselves as ultimately the cause. They contribute to the gentrification of entire areas and then complain about the fact that those areas are no longer authentic. They work but do not pay taxes. The digital age has allowed many professionals to work anywhere in the world, etc. It says, now I'm a foreigner living in Bali. I was raised here since I was a child. I may have left for periods of up to a few years, university, etc. But this is where I always come back. So it's my home. My Indonesian is not perfect. Whose is? And I'm only now, after 16 years, making an effort to learn Balinese. I live in a local house, no pool, no massive lighting to make it look pretty, 2 small bedrooms and a small kitchen, nothing fancy. I don't own a car, but instead ride a 1998 motorcycle. I work with Balinese farmers, attempting to help them revert to more sustainable and traditional forms of agriculture. Many of my friends, foreigners that grew up here, are doing similar things. Many surpass me in these aspects. Are there too many of us? I don't think so. I would dare to say perhaps there are too few. Are there too many of the foreigners that match the points outlined above? Certainly. Even one of them would be too many, and unfortunately there are likely tens of thousands. All right, but here's another one. All right, now I'm writing this anonymously as I have a lot of Balinese business associates that I do not want retribution from. But this person wants to respond to the prior person. I'm an expat and have lived here in Bali for many years. At the last known statistics, there were approximately 27,000 bule quitas holders. That's foreign holders of... A quitas is the temporary residential visa. It's what we have. It's good for a year, and then you extend it for another year. We're just extending now for another year. That's one of our big expenses in the year. It costs $560 each to extend. And it said, and then add to that, there's also kitap holders, and that's permanent residents. And I know many kitap, people who've been here a long time. You can get a kitap after, we'll be eligible in 3 years. We would have been eligible now, but there were complications that broke the chain. You got to add up 5 quitas, I think. There's non-quitas holders who skirt around the visa requirements by a trip to Singapore every 60 days, many of which can be found in Ubud in a yoga session. Well, I do know people who do that. They'll be here on a limited business visa, say. I know a guy who's lived here many, many years, and he just gets a new visa every 2 months because he makes homes here and ships them to Costa Rica and ships furniture to America. So he's got money, and he loves to fly to Singapore every 60 days to be there because it's like going to another world from here. I'd like to do that too. I understand we love going to Singapore, but, we can't afford to do it very often. We've done it in 8 years. We've done it. We've gone twice for 3 days. And people come in on tourist visas, which are free for the first 30 days, and then can be extended. You get the right to extend it when you come in. You got to pay for it right when you come in, or you can't. It's too late. $35 or something last time I looked. And then you can extend for another month, but the extension costs about, or last time I knew, about $50. And then you stay another month. So people do that. Then they fly out to Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, wherever they want to go. Those are the closest, cheapest places to fly to. And, some of them will just stay in the airport and get the next flight and come back. And others will, stay a few days or do whatever and then come back. And they'll do that multiple times, over and over and over. You can get a little flack at the airport. Depending on who you get, you might get somebody that's sort of a suspicious. what are you doing? Are you working here? And what are you doing going in and out on a tourist visa all these times? But mainly, the immigration here is very nice, and there's not that problem. You know who has mean immigration is America. Ooh. I'm sure there's many fine people working for immigration in America. Now, a disclaimer here. When I say, what the rules are, I'm talking about for Americans. And I'm talking about, I haven't had to know all that stuff in a while, but I get little updates because of knowing people now and then. There's a lot of countries that have the same deal America has, but you have to check and make sure what the deal is with your country and what it is today, because they change things a lot. Yeah. So don't pay taxes. So he said, I'm going to respond to his claims. I know a very large number of expats also living in Bali, which are married to locals, and many of which have also brought substantial financial investment into Bali, employing many locals and paying considerable taxes. I personally pay more tax in Indonesia than any Balinese I know. In fact, every expat living in Bali I know also pay high taxes. So to claim that foreigners do not pay tax is just ill-informed, probably more a reflection of one's own circle of associates. Now, the guy mentioned people like me who can work anywhere in the world. Yeah, we don't pay any tax, but we don't make enough money to pay tax. But anybody with a quitas here is required to have a housekeeper. And, in America, I did everything myself. Everything. I mean, I put in gas lines and electrical and plumbing. I'm not real good at all that, but I know people who were, so they'd give me advice and stuff, and I'd do it. Put in water pumps, water tanks, Sometimes I could hire people to help, different things. Here, I don't do anything except work and walk and swim. It's not good to do stuff yourself here. You got to help them. They depend on us for work. So we have a gardener, we have a housekeeper, we have drivers, and we have a guy that brings us coconut water. He brings coconuts, opens them up, and we get that twice a week. And he needs us. We hire sometimes more people than we need to. We know it's time to hire so-and-so. It's during COVID. The guy brings us coconuts. He was in the tourist business, and there's no tourists, so he's out of work. So one situation we've got is people who will go hungry if we don't hire them to do some things. And, I used to pay them and they just say, oh, thank you, I'll see you next time or whatever. Now they say, thank you, I'll go buy some rice. And our gardener came today. It's not his time to come, but he was desperate. He said he hadn't eaten, he can't sleep. He's got to feed his kids. So, yeah, okay, work today, we'll pay you. So this is a bit of a drain on our rather marginal income, which is largely supported by donations to Cuke archives, which, help us to get by. There's some other things, a little bit from publishing, but mainly donations. So I figure right now we're spending a few $100s a month helping people out. Now, that might not sound like much, but just multiply it by 10 or even 20 for what they can do with it. There's a program I know to help very, very people on the east side of the island who were, cut off from health care and just, they're just off the grid. And it's setting them up with, water, putting in metal roofs that will collect the water and put it in water tanks, and helping establish a better, standard of living for them that is just the very bare basics. And their goal is that all adults there will be able to earn $100 a month. That's the goal of it. See, so you can't compare it to American economy. Yeah, Katrinka just went with another member of BWA, Bali International Women's Association, which Katrinka is head of the Social Welfare Committee, and they brought food to not to a particular village where people were really hard up, but to a place on the way, about an hour from here, where food was being collected to take to a number of villages. And BWAP is both local women. They tend to be well-to-do, and yes, and expat women, and it's a good organization. It's been here. It was started in the 70s, so it's been around a long time. And there's so many ways. I mean, the other person, I think, was, they were looking at one side, sort of negative things. I mean, it depends a lot, whether it's a person that sees the glass as half empty or turned over. But like, I talked about they don't pay taxes. Well, we don't pay taxes, but everything we spend goes to Balinese. I mean, that's better than taxes. And we and many people we know who are expats are involved in things to help benefit local people. And, they have a communal society where and they have many ways of helping each other. But, they don't tip. That's something foreigners do. Whenever I have an exchange with somebody of a product or whatever, I think about, what's their financial situation. Maybe a 35-cent tip here is a really good tip. That's 5,000 rupiah. But the local people tend to want to make sure they get every rupiah back. But some of them learn from this bad habit of foreigners. There's some places where tipping is an insult, but no, I haven't found that to be true here. You don't tip in Japan, but in Japan, the local people have money. So anyway, I don't know. It's and we're helping put the. We're actually not helping. We're putting a daughter of our housekeeper through a business school, which is $1,000 a year, and it's $500 every 6 months. And she's going to end up she can start off as an accountant. She can become a CPA. She's going to be able to support herself and help her parents. We're only helping people we know. Bali ran on 80% tourism. And that's down to, 5% now or something. It's just, you can't get in now. Right now, you can't get in. You can't even get in if you have a quitas. And, we can hear planes coming into the airport from here. Oh, wow. You don't hear many. Well, we don't hear them all, but we hear some. You don't hear many, I'll tell you. I heard one yesterday. But on the other hand, they don't have the problems America has. America has a problem like this, it'll fall apart because it doesn't have the culture. It has like a communal culture. And it's not that far from its agricultural base. So, a driver we know who's never had to work in the fields or anything, When he was a kid, he said you could just go in the jungle and get food, and everything was different, and he's been involved with tourism and electronics. Well, he can't. He's working on his brother's farm now, but he can work on his brother's farm. He's doing all right, and they're resilient. They're more resilient than we are, and they've got a very strong culture. It's much more unified. America is a melting pot of all sorts of different types of people that won't necessarily all come together, right? So, all right. And then this guy writes the claim that foreigners do not pay taxes just ill-informed and probably more reflection of his. No, I've already said that. Then do not contribute. These are points from the prior letter he's disagreeing with. I'll go as far as to say Bali would not be the successful tourist destination it currently is without the foreigners who have invested, developed, and lived here. I will also say that every successful NGO and charity organization I know of in Bali are all run by foreigners. Well, I know some that are run by locals, but they get the idea from foreigners, maybe originally started by. He says, I don't see too many Balinese doing it successfully. If it weren't for the expats, Bali would just be another Lombok. That's the next island over. There's another side to that, and that is that the Chinese are good business people. So local Chinese, and that's one reason why there's resentment against Chinese in Indonesia, which pops up now and then. There were between 500,000 and 1 million Chinese mass murdered back in the mid-'60s, calling them communists. But it became an hysteria, and people ran amok. And the term ran amok comes from Indonesia. Chinese will come in, and they've got, thousands of years of history of knowing how to run business, knowing how to organize things, knowing how to account, knowing what to do with money. And so they would open up successful businesses and become your tech people and different things. But, what I've noticed, I was first here in 92, is more and more Balinese. This isn't genetic, it's cultural. More and more Balinese are becoming sophisticated in the sort of way that Chinese culture and Western culture is. It doesn't make them happier, I'll say that. They get anxiety. They have hypertension. And with the food that's introduced, they get diabetes. Progress, nobody wants to go back. It's like a disease in many ways. In the long run, and as far as I can see with what's happening with the climate, it's a terminal disease, unless there's some big turnaround. All right, the next, failure to assimilate. I am married to an Indonesian and live by her customs. I eat at local warrants. This isn't me, David. This is the person whose message I'm writing, right? I ride on my motor he says, I ride on my motor. That's sort of the way they'd say it. He means I'd ride on my motor scooter according to the local customs, and I speak Bahasa Indonesia. It is true, however, there are a few customs I do not practice. Now, this is a good list. 1, I do not fly a kite. Kite flying is such a big deal. And it's wonderful when you walk around anytime there's wind, and this is the windy time of year. The sky will be filled with kites. You can see them for miles and miles around. And some of them are small, little kids flying little kites. And they're like butterfly form or a frog. They're all some animal. And they get big. They get really big. They get really, really big. One that's 6 feet in diameter, that's not big. 12 feet, that's big. But then, they'll get up to some of these streamers like, several hundred feet. It's wonderful. And this is the center of the kite flying area. They have the big yearly kite flying festival here. They won't have it this year. They didn't have it last year. But there will be, as long as they're not people congregating too far together, they'll want to break up. There'll be people flying kites. I mean, a lot of people, they don't have anything else to do now. All right. So, all right, here. Number 2, I do look both ways at an intersection. Number 3, I do not participate in ceremonies or contribute the family food budget toward them. Well, this is a complaint I've heard from some Indonesians, some Balinese. And what he told me, when I was early here, a driver we used to have, he said that there was so much, they had to contribute to the local temple, and there's different types of temples so much. And he said it had driven 20% of the Hindus in Bali to become Christians. They didn't want to be Muslims, and lose all sorts of freedom of choice. They became Christians, and the Christians weren't taking their money, and neither were the Hare Krishna. And he and I have been to Hare Krishna stuff together here. And in India, Hare Krishna is mainstream, it's accepted. But they just made last year, they made Hare Krishna illegal here because of, I don't know, I'd have to look into it. Why? Because there are only six or seven, I think six accepted religions in Bali. You have to be one of them. And having no religion is not permitted. But there's a lot of people who said I have no permit. There's nobody really checking up on it. Number 4, I admit when I am wrong. Boy, hey, there you go. That's one of the local customs he won't follow. He admits when he's wrong. Let me tell you, that's true. You don't tell anybody they're wrong. It's sort of like in Japan. You say yes, but. Also, we could look at it like this. People lose face if you disagree with them. My tech guy, he's Chinese Indonesian. He absolutely will not admit he's wrong. I mean, and this is a technical thing with the computer. I know now. I don't disagree with him. But there's ways to get around with that by agreeing and then saying, but you'd prefer so-and-so or whatever. All right. And then he says, number 5, I do not throw all my rubbish in the local river. That, of course, is an enormous problem, and it ends up being an enormous problem worldwide, with Indonesia contributing more plastic trash to the world's oceans per capita than any country in the world, more than China, much more than India. Percentage-wise, Indonesia's number 1. Volume-wise, China's number 1. And has not been real cooperative in dealing with it or admitting it. But India has done a little better. I don't know why. But it's a worldwide problem. It's a worldwide problem that, it's, poisoning the oceans. It's causing serious poisoning in the oceans, aside from ugly trash and tons of plastic washing up on famous beaches here at some months of the year. And, they're trying to deal with it, but the people in the country, they don't want people in the city telling them they can't throw their trash in the rivers and creeks. They've been doing it for 1,000 years, and they didn't notice there was any difference when plastic came in. Before it was all organic, So, all right. So then he concludes, are there too many foreigners here? Yes, there may be, particularly the hippies living in Ubud who contribute little. But I clearly remember the after effects of 2002 when no foreigners came. That's after the bombings here. And the locals were forced to eat their pets. There were many expats who reinvested substantial sums of money to get the economy working again. Don't knock what the expats have contributed to this place. Without foreigners, the Balinese wouldn't have a living standard well above the Indonesian average. So that's an interesting letter, and it made me comment on some things. And I think you get the picture. And, mainly I started this because I'm worried about our budget and the amount that comes out of it that we absolutely have to spend to help people out. And, I've been doing a little fundraising for Cuke Archives recently. And, if I had a big overhead and a big building and a big staff, I could raise more money. But something small like this, I don't know, that really accomplishes a great deal more with volunteers and making oneself a slave labor to what you're doing, then accomplishes it's a much bigger bang for the buck in terms of what we're doing than some larger organizations. But people, I think, feel more comfortable giving to places with more real estate and staff and everything, paid staff. So I'm thinking about, pardon me, I don't like to complain about things like that. I'm thinking about, maybe I should start a separate thing for a separate fundraiser in some way for Balinese. People are always telling me do what's that thing called? GoFundMe. I've always resisted. I hate the idea of one of those places that take this big percentage of money. But maybe I could start something that raised little money to help Indonesians. I don't know. Anyway, so that's the stuff that's on my mind. We love living in Bali. We love the people. And we like the expats, we know too. And we pray that everybody here will survive this pandemic and everything will blossom and everyone will be happy, healthy, free from harm, love life, and awaken. This has been a Cuke audio podcast. Another episode of Life in Bali. I'm DC Poohbah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Dogget Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.